You get to Changi, you're there, you're unshackled, and you're told strip. So you strip off all your clothes, bend over, check you out, go give you an x-ray. Next day you're then transferred to what's going to be your permanent waiting home in a different section of the prison. And that's when you're given your little grass mat that is barely half a centimetre thick, which is supposed to be your bedding. That's it. And then you're stuck in the concrete prison cell with the open toilet. The cell is about 8 foot by 12. That includes a toilet / showering area. So there's at least 3 people in each cell. Sometimes there's 4. Mondays through to Saturdays, you get 1 hour out of your cell.
That was Richard Whittam, who joined Worldclear in August 2017 and ended up in Singapore's Changi prison less than 2 years later. You heard him there describing life in Changi, a notorious prison famously used by the Japanese to detain Allied prisoners of war during World War II. I'm Gareth Vaughan, a journalist at interest.co.nz.
And I'm Emmanuel Stokes, an investigative reporter with the Organised Crime and Corruption Reporting Project.
This is a podcast from interest.co.nz with help from the Brian Gaynor Business Journalism Initiative. We're both based in New Zealand, but we're telling a story that has its tentacles spread all around the world to every continent you can think of. It touches countries like Sweden, the United States, Belarus, Gambia, Vietnam, Latin America, and Vanuatu. The list goes on well beyond that.
What started out as an investigation into a small business based in the New Zealand city of Hamilton offering transactional banking services has exploded into a global story with themes that edge into the weird, shocking, and, as you'll find out, the outlandish.
Welcome to episode 2 of Hamilton Confidential. In this episode, you'll hear from the self-described whistleblower, Richard Whittam. So who is he, and how did the leak come about? Whittam was a Worldclear employee. I had written a handful of articles about Worldclear, including covering, shall we say, a jam Whittam himself was in when I first heard from him back in mid-2018. He contacted me sporadically from then on, culminating in an offer in 2024 to share a significant volume of Worldclear data. He duly did so, and this provided the bulk of the information we've been sifting through in our investigation.
Whittam's is quite a story, and something of a story within the broader Worldclear story. He spent more than 2 years on remand in Changi before pleading guilty to 3 charges under Singapore's Corruption, Drug Trafficking and Other Serious Crimes Confiscation of Benefits Act, relating to removing more than 1.1 million Singapore dollars from Singapore through free transfers out of an OCBC bank account, which, according to Singapore prosecutors, quote, in part directly represented his benefits from criminal conduct.
While acknowledging doing things that were wrong and being naive, Whittam says he pleaded guilty because doing so enabled him to leave prison and be reunited with his wife and 4 children. He maintains he had a right to the money in question due to a business funding agreement between Worldclear and his company, T1 Holdings.
Of course, we went to Worldclear's director David Hillary to ask what he thought of Richard Whittam's claims about the business funding agreement.
If Mr. Whittam wants to contact me to express his remorse for unintentionally stealing Worldclear's money, to say sorry, to apologise, to tell me what he would have done if I had asked him, or to ask me to say I'll not hold it against him anymore, or that his debts are discharged, he can do so directly. I can't see anything new or newsworthy in what you have put together that warrants any further comments from me. In a statement to New Zealand Police in June 2018, David Hillary said, "The only funding Worldclear has ever provided to T1 was an arrangement that T1 would hold the money on trust for Worldclear." Whittam is the source for the vast majority of the leaked Worldclear documents this Hamilton Confidential series is based on.
Whittam says he downloaded the data multiple times during 2018, initially wanting files related to T1 Holdings' relationship with Worldclear, and then more wide-ranging Worldclear information that he thought might be relevant to authorities in New Zealand and globally. Whittam agreed to go on the record, but asked us not to disclose his location. New Zealand police have told him he still faces an outstanding arrest warrant for a theft charge relating to his time at Worldclear. In an interview with Whittam, Gareth asked him what his motivation was for providing the data.
Look, I've done some things there that obviously are not right. I've been naive and stupid in the process, as I've already mentioned, around that going. But at the same point in time going, there's something here that's not right. And people need to be aware that what Worldclear has done for many years, as we can see from the transaction data there, is also not right as well too. Yes, people can label me as a bad guy. People can slander my name and go for it, whatever. Okay, I've pleaded guilty to something. And yep, David's going to hate me saying the fact that I don't agree with pleading guilty, but there was a need to do so in the end to get home. It's like you can't spend that long in that dump of a prison and not be desperate to get the heck out of there. I would love to be able to hear this heard in a court. I'm hoping that this can be heard in a New Zealand court at some point in time, preferably, to have this all out there.
Okay, let's get into it. Let's hear what this self-styled whistleblower had to say when Gareth interviewed him one-on-one about his time at Worldclear.
Cast your mind all the way back to early August 2017. So where are you? What are you doing? And how are things going for you?
Back then, we were living in New Zealand, living in Hamilton, close to family, close to friends. I'd recently actually been made redundant. At that point in time, I actually had already made quite a lot of good business relationships with people, particularly in the retail fit-out world. So that'd be constructing retail stores. That was something I was interested in doing myself. So around that time then in August 2017, I'm looking around going, what else can I do? While my business is still sort of, grassroots, what else can I do to sort of, literally bring home the bacon here? And I saw the role advertised with Worldclear around a banking establishment, relationship management, whatever job title was called at the time. Thought, okay, I'm a person that is good at sales. I like working towards commissions here, and they seem to be, a relatively small local business here that potentially could be a good fit for now. The early starts also encouraged me as well too, that was advertised, because at the time I was actually coaching my son's basketball team and also working with their soccer team. So I thought, this is great. I can start early. I've got time in the afternoon for the coaching, time to work on my own business. Let's see how we go.
Yeah, so I've got the job ad here, actually, that you saw. So it was on Seek. So Banking Relationships Establishment Project. So this is sourcing and contacting US banks to establish good quality transactional banking facilities. Use your sales and networking skills to get access to appropriate senior bankers. And then it goes on. It's quite a long ad, actually, but another bit that's, I guess, of interest. In this project, you will represent the company as the applicant and customer to secure good quality transactional or correspondent banking facilities from US banks. And it does say, obtaining and accessing these services is challenging for various bank policy and risk appetite reasons, among other things. So you read this, and what are you thinking?
I'm thinking, okay, it sounds like an interesting challenge to me. It's an area there that I haven't worked directly in as such, but I thought, well, I've actually had a relationship with banks in the past. I've been sort of juggling finances myself in terms of what you can do around retail project management. I can do this. I can form relationships. I can talk with anybody. I've talked with the CEOs of the world. I've talked with the janitor in the world. So I'm going, I can form relationships with these people here, surely.
So you apply for the job and you get an interview?
Had an interview. The first interview straight away was actually first and final interview, which was with David Hillary himself. This sounds good to me. So I said, I'll put my hand up. Hey, I'd like to come along and join your team and do this role for you whilst I'm working on my own business.
And when you were going in to start this job, I mean, what are your sort of initial impressions of Worldclear, of David Hillary, the managing director, and what's your sort of understanding of what Worldclear does when you start working
at first, David come across very charismatic. He was very much, almost like a little showman. It was like the circus ringleader. He said, okay, this team in here is doing this section around payments. This person here, they're doing the customer service. We're a small team. We're very focused. He was a very good talker. He said, okay, we've had challenges around US banking before. We recommend, trying some of the bigger banks first and then working down a list. I'll leave it up to you to find a list of banks and basically go for it. And I'm like, okay, right. I've not given a great lot of guidance, but he goes, look, I want a quality bank that does good international transactions.
So your understanding is that Worldclear is a financial institution and it needs bank accounts.
It needs bank accounts, and that he mentioned at the stage that he'd had challenges there because it's a New Zealand-based company. Sometimes he's having challenges where the international banks wouldn't always like continue to do business with them, and that wasn't explained why at that stage, why they didn't like continue to do business. But I need help finding others that can keep a constant flow. And if they do happen to shut down, then we've got a backup.
So did you have any understanding of who their customers were?
At that stage, no. No idea. I had no understanding of the customers or the number of customers that Worldclear had at that point in time.
Did David tell you anything about that?
Not until later on. when it was a case of going that they had, I believe at the stage around under 100 customers, but that base of customers was keeping the business ticking over. And he happily said to me on multiple occasions then later on, after a couple months of being there, I don't do any advertising. I don't need to do any advertising. The customers just come to me. They come to me from recommendations of current customers, and they just flow in. I myself found that very weird going, I've come from companies that, yes, they might have been larger, but marketing was always a big percentage play for them. It was always get the business out there. And I'm like, you're not doing any advertising? How can you get customers just from word of mouth going, well, you must be doing something right if you can get customers through word of mouth. And I thought to myself, the numbers seem to be quite small, but okay, you must be doing enough transactions to be able to literally pay all of us and make a profit.
And clearly, though, your understanding was that the customers were at least primarily overseas.
Yes, they were overseas, because I asked the question saying, are you doing advertising locally? He goes, no, I don't target New Zealand customers at all. He goes, we may do a New Zealand business, but we are targeting international customers.
Okay. And basically, you're cold calling banks, and primarily in the US?
Yeah, cold calling banks and doing and trying to find contacts through email and online. And I'm just going through a list. I'm trying to target the bigger banks, the Chase and the Bank of Americas, and they sort of carry on, all the ones that are the big brands everyone knows, trying to get connections and contacts there, and just getting shut down all the time. Then I start going for the local, more regional banks, more state-based banks, going, what can I find that might take a call, might get an interest at all in terms of actually operating with Worldclear.
So basically, they're all rejecting you. On what grounds?
First of all, it'll be an overseas company, not interested. Second of all, it'll be you're interested in doing payment transactions. No, we're not interested in doing that for an overseas company.
And did you try anywhere other than the US?
Yeah, that's when I started trying other countries, looking at Europe and looking into Asia as well too.
So, this must have been quite frustrating.
It was extremely frustrating, because I'm going, okay, I'm here working for what was, a pretty average sort of base rate. I had great thoughts and sort of, inclinations around the fact that I would be getting some sort of commission. It's like, you're out early, nothing's happening. You're a salesperson. Why can't you get it? What's happening? I said, the banks overseas just don't want to know.
So you get to November 2017 and things are just not.
Yeah.
They're really not working. So what happens next?
Well, that's when the suggestion was what else can we do? I said, look, I'm trying to really get Retail Guru going here, which was my business consultancy company. And I'm going, I need funding for that. I need something to happen around that. Would you be interested in doing that? Maybe you can make some money from that. I said, you guys, apparently you're a financial institution. Yeah, no, not so directly keen doing that. Okay, we might have to rework this. Would you potentially do something else? I said, well, what's that? Maybe I can give you some funding for your business, but I'll need access to your bank accounts. I said, well, what do you mean by that? Well, if we get access to a company that you set up through your bank accounts, maybe we can do some transactions through that, to help out Worldclear here and there. And I was like, okay, yeah, potentially, if you're going to work through some funding for me, for my company, and it's also going to mean potentially I get some commission, that might be helpful.
In terms of the funding for your company, is this in the form of a loan, or?
It was going to be in form of loans. So it was going to be in form of either business credit, that was a line of credit. So in the case of being, the funding will be available to be paid back once my end customer had paid that back. Then there'd be, depending on the amount of money, we'd agree on a percentage base of what it was going to be, the cut was going to be each time. If it was 50K, it was 100K, 200K, what at the time would work it through, what was needed, and then also at the time, what beneficial use Worldclear might have had out of that company's accounts. So I said, well, I've got Retail Guru set up. Retail Guru's there, it's running. I've got myself, my wife, and my father-in-law are directors of the company.
And shareholders?
Shareholders as well too. No, I don't want to use them. I said, why not? No, I want you to be the sole director of a company. Yeah, but if I have sole director of that company, can I use that to fund Retail Guru? Well, if it's within what we want to do at the time, yes, you can. Okay, right. So you want to have a second company, a brand new one, which became then Tier 1 Holdings. You want to have that gets the funding, and that you can have some access for Worldclear to be able to process some transactions through that. Yes. Okay, well, I thought about it, talked to the wife. Okay, and I said, if Tier 1 Holdings themselves actually get some accounts set up for you, whether it be in New Zealand, whether it be in America or in another country, would then Tier 1 Holdings get commission for doing that? Or what would happen? We'd work through a commission structure for that. And I said, okay, well, let's look at that then. Let's see how we go.
Okay, so T1 Holdings is incorporated by you as the sole director and shareholder December 2017, and you open some bank accounts. So Worldclear gets access to the T1 Holdings accounts. You set the T1 Holdings accounts up?
Yes, correct.
So how does it work? So who can access them? who can move money in and out of those accounts?
Yep. So the T1 Holdings accounts were set up usually in bank because it was a business account. Then the bank, say, for example, ASB would provide an online login. So I'd have the master login for that. Then I could set up separate logins. So it could be a sub-master, could be then other individual access points and different areas where people could do levels around that. Each time that an account was set up, David would be provided with the next level of access so that he could control who was having access to what, who could perform transactions and transfers directly through Worldclear staff. So I would then have visibility to what they were actually doing with those accounts. It'll be a case of going, I've had the original access. If I'm accessing it, it's very, very seldom because he's got himself or Worldclear staff that are actually accessing those accounts to make transfers in and out on behalf of Worldclear.
So there are bank accounts opened with several different banks through T1 Holdings?
There was, yes.
Yep. So New Zealand banks?
New Zealand banks, so there was ASB, there was Westpac, there was ANZ, and there was BNZ as well too, all opened with T1 Holdings. And then there were actually accounts then that were primarily based in Europe.
As for what David Hillary says about this arrangement, in a 2018 complaint to New Zealand police about Whittam, Hillary said, following discussions with Whittam agreed to set up a new company, T1 Holdings Ltd, to hold funds on behalf of Worldclear. New Zealand company's office records show T1 Holdings was registered by Whittam. In the police complaint, Hillary also said Retail Guru was a company Richard owned separately and Retail Guru had no involvement with Worldclear or its clients. Hillary says he asked Whittam about Retail Guru and Whittam said it was a consulting company for retail businesses.
So you've got your Retail Guru business as well, and are you getting paid commission for opening these T1 Holdings bank accounts by David Hillary?
What Worldclear was doing was every time that T1 Holdings was being successful in opening a bank account that was giving access to, or for Worldclear staff to access, or David Hillary himself, Retail Guru was being paid a commission by Worldclear for that opening. So Retail Guru then was getting the funds through coming as a commission. T1 Holdings was providing the access for that.
Okay, so those transactions, so Worldclear staff effectively moving money through T1 Holdings bank accounts on behalf of Worldclear's customers.
Correct.
Is that going in the same bank accounts as your Retail Guru money, or how did that work?
That was all going through.
Or are they separate?
That was all going through T1 Holdings accounts. Nothing went through from that into Retail Guru accounts at all.
But T1 Holdings accounts, you didn't use them yourself? Very
seldomly.
Okay.
Because any funding that was going into T1 Holdings, if it was actually business funding, it would be transferred out through to Retail Guru.
We asked lawyer Fiona Hall and anti-money laundering specialist Martin Dilley what they thought about this arrangement, and here's what they said.
The only thing that I make of it is that there seems to be an attempt to obscure what's going on. They're just, to me, I can't think of a single reason why you would do that, and you've put an employee in there. I looked at it and I just thought there's no justification for that I can think of, a logical reason for a legitimate business to set up a structure like that.
So my first thought when I saw this was that this suggests to me that the entity is having trouble maintaining bank accounts. And so to continue routing funds, you set up an entity that essentially appears clean. That is, it doesn't appear to have any connections to your business or any that would be obvious for a bank opening that account. So what might be interesting from the bank's perspective is what did that entity put down on the application form was its business, and what did it say was its nature and the nature and purpose of that relationship.
So that's exactly what Gareth asked Richard Whittam.
What are you telling the banks that T1 Holdings is doing or going to be doing?
Well, essentially exactly what Retail Guru is going to be doing. Retail fit-outs, and it was going to be doing transactions around business consultancy and otherwise like that. That's what the banks were being told, because that was my intent for the company, or at least once I got funding to be able to operate that, that's what the company will be doing. Then they weren't being told, obviously, at that point in stage, that Worldclear would also get access to those accounts.
So in that summer 2017, 2018, how well are things going with T1 Holdings, with Worldclear, and what's your sense by that point, having been, I guess, involved for a few months, in terms of what Worldclear's doing, who's it working with?
Yeah, the staff themselves are still relatively quiet and relatively reserved. There seemed to be a bit more of a positive buzz, though, sort of coming through January, February in the Worldclear offices. David himself was a lot more happy than I'd seen him previously in late 2017. He says, the facilities that we've got there working through with T1 Holdings, helping out Worldclear, are working well. he was more positive. In terms of interactions, he would tell me that he was having conversations with a guy called Magnuson, and yeah, it was a relatively positive time.
So in terms of this Magnuson person, so how much did you know about him, and how did David sort of talk about him, and did he actually ever talk to this guy?
At that point in time, I didn't know much about him. As I later learned, the guy's name was Carl Michael Magnuson, or Michael Magnuson, as was often being referred to, and he was being talked about as as a peer, as a colleague, as someone that David looked up to in terms of sort of assistance in the banking facilities world. But he seemed to be at least twice a month, maybe 3 times a month, having conversations with Magnuson about whatever was going on with Worldclear. At the point in time, I didn't realise that Magnuson, of course, had been a shareholder of Worldclear, something I learned later on as I was doing more research into Worldclear itself.
So you're in summer 2018. Things are going pretty well. David's happy. I mean, how much visibility are you having of transactions that are going through the T1 Holdings bank accounts?
Yeah, very little at that stage. And that is, as I look back, and quite naive, because effectively I had given these guys access to the bank accounts for a company that was under my control. And that frankly was stupid. I look back and go, that was naive, that was stupid. I would never ever do that again, because that's just far too much risk. But then come into March 2018 and I'm starting to get, calls and emails coming through to me because of what T1 Holdings have been processing or trying to process. Oh, you're trying to process transactions to this European bank account that might have been Lithuania, might have been trying to process something to Ukraine. We can't do that. I'm like, what's going on here? Or we're getting rejections coming back through as well too. Oh, we couldn't process because of XYZ reason that was given by the bank at the time. This is a concern. Why is T1 Holdings processing this 100,000 euros to this entity in France? I'm like, I don't know. I said, I'll call you back. I said, it's been done by someone else in my office. I need to find out. Then I'd ask David, just reject it. I'll just ignore them. Don't worry about it. We'll sort it out. Don't worry. Just cancel that transaction. Follow them off for some reason. And that's really when the red flag started coming up. That's when I started also then look at the accounts and go, well, what is actually going through these accounts here? Is it, the occasional processing of transactions that I was being originally told about, or is it something more? And it was something more. Some days it was a lot more. Some days it'd be millions of dollars more each single day, and multiple transactions, not just, 2 or 3. It could be 50, 60 transactions going through a day on the T1 Holdings accounts. And I'm freaking out going, what's happening here? David, I've approached David and he says, look, it's okay. This is transactions we need to get through. It's been very helpful. T1 Holdings has been very helpful. You're getting funding. You're getting commission as well. So don't worry about it. I've got it under control. We have strict AML procedures here. It'll be fine.
So when you first started to get concerned or worried about what was going on, it was about March 2018?
It was about March. It was about March. I'll say around mid-March there.
And did any banks drop T1 Holdings?
At that stage, no. The banks were kept open. They were happily accepting the funding through.
So the T1 Holdings bank accounts with the New Zealand banks, they would have been, they were multiple currency accounts, right?
They were. Yeah, there was US dollar, euro, Hong Kong dollar, Canadian dollar, which was barely used, but it was there, and British pound. Okay. So at what point do you decide, I really need to get out of here, I need to get away from this? Yeah, it was getting towards probably mid to late April. That's when I started thinking, okay, this is a problem. What's happening here? I've got a lot of work that's been put into Retail Guru. I've got a deal here that's literally on the line, but I need to secure the funding around that, and I need to be able to secure some manufacturers for that as well too. I thought, okay, if I can get these guys here on board, I can get them ready to manufacture something for me here. I'm going to be able to do this transaction, and it's going to probably set up Retail Guru, and then we can get to the point where hopefully by that point in time, there'll be enough transaction history through there. I can get a genuine business loan through a New Zealand bank for Retail Guru. I can then cut ties, or at least significantly reduce ties with Worldclear, and walk away from what could be completely a big mess. Okay. So when do you decide you are getting out? That was really there in May. My wife and I talked about it. We said, look, we've got an upcoming holiday here that we're trying to work in as a business holiday as well too. Let's get across to Singapore there. Let's have a bit of a holiday, a bit of a breakaway from this. So we thought, we've got to do something. We've got to get ourselves out of here. I'm going to put a lock on the T1 Holdings accounts. They can't use any more. I'm sick of it, because I'm getting really worried here that something is going to come along and I'm going to be caught up in a New Zealand prison because of what David's doing and his team are doing through those accounts here. It's a worry. But at the same point in time, we need funds to make sure we can get this deal across the line. with Retail Guru, and T1 Holdings got the funding for that.
So May 2018, you've shut off access to the T1 Holdings accounts.
Yep.
And you and your family are going to head off to Singapore?
Yep.
So what else happens then?
We head off to Singapore. We're on our flights across to there. We literally land in Singapore, and that's where we realise, okay, hold on, wait a minute, we've got a problem here. Now my personal bank accounts are stopped. And I'm like, why are my personal bank accounts not accessible? What's going on? Maybe it's this problem with my card. I'm checking my phone messages. I've got a message from David. Where are you? What are you doing? I'm like, what? You already know I'm going overseas. I said to him, I'm overseas. You know, I'm not contactable at the moment. I'm travelling. I'll call you soon. What's the problem? I get messages back. We need to talk.
So are you saying he knew that you were going
He knew
to
that we were going overseas. He knew we were going overseas to Singapore, yes.
So what was the plan you discussed with him, and what was your own personal plan at that point?
So what I discussed with David was that we need to get across. We're going on a business holiday here. We're going to be in Singapore. I need to get across to Hong Kong. I've got this deal going through with Retail Guru. T1 Holdings is going to need some funding, which is then they're going to on-fund Retail Guru to do that. Do what you need, do what you need. We're busy, do what you need. The funding's there. If I take a step back as well too, there is a business funding agreement that has been established by this point in time a long time ago between T1 Holdings and Worldclear. The funding was a line of credit up to €2 million per month. That was there. I said, why is it in euros? Oh, because most of my funding's held offshore. And if I transfer it to you, it's going to come offshore, which did happen quite frequently. Funding from Worldclear, funds will come through from European bank accounts or from American accounts, would either be in US or European dollars. I said, well, why am I signing a deal that's in euros? That's how I want it to be. Okay, well, I'll sign a deal. I said, I don't need that much money. If you need that much money, there'll be a problem because you surely won't need that. I said, but why am I signing a deal then for €2 million? That looks good for the banks and overseas as well too. They want to see that you've got a legitimate business here that's getting a lot of transactions going through it. So if I sign you a deal for €2 million, then the European banks and any other banks overseas will go, you've got a lot of transactions going through. Surely that will help cover the Worldclear payments coming through. I said, but I need like 200K, maybe 300K tops for this. No, you sign the business funding agreement for more.
Can you just tell me again, so who are the parties to this?
So the parties of this is Worldclear, with David Hillary as signatory, and myself as T1 Holdings as signatory on that. So that was designed there so that there would be two factors. One, I'd get the funding that I needed to go through as being originally requested. And two, it will also provide a level of cover to the banks if there's any queries around what amount of money is going through this account. Why is there such high figures going through this account? And
so when you go to Singapore, it's in May. So why did you shut access to the T1 Holdings accounts?
The day before I'd flown out, what was a fairly, it was a brutal conversation with David. I said, I've got real concerns about the transactions going through. This week, there's been numerous flags coming through here. I've had numerous phone calls coming through from banks. We need to talk about this. This is a problem. He kept on pushing me back, going, this is not a problem. Don't worry about it. You've got funding. You've got commissions coming through. The business is going well. Don't worry about it. I'm worried as we're traveling overseas that we're going to have a problem. We're going to have a problem where some transactions are going to go through and I may not see them at all because I haven't been monitoring actively, as I should have been, the transactions going through. I went, no, stuff it. I said to my wife, I'm going to shut down their access. He can be pissed off at me today on Friday while we're traveling. He can think about it over the weekend. Then we have a conversation on Monday. Then we can sit down. We can talk about it. We can be here, he can be there, and hopefully he'll see some reason. I said, we're on the cusp now of a great deal here that is hopefully going to set up Retail Guru, keep our business running, and I can't have him stuff it up. And then, of course, what happened? Everything went absolute shit.
So this is Hillary's response to questions about Whittam. He said, I disagree with your characterisation of the events as a dispute between Mr. Whittam and myself. There was no falling out prior to his departure. Mr. Whittam misappropriated funds and departed immediately thereafter. He was subsequently arrested, charged, pleaded guilty and convicted. He was also subject to civil liability and bankruptcy.
Worldclear and I did not knowingly or recklessly assist in any money laundering and operated AML CFT controls, that is, anti-money laundering, countering financing of terrorism, in line with statutory requirements.
So when you leave New Zealand and you head to Singapore in May 18th?
Yep, May 20 years, around about May 18th, thereabouts, yep.
So are you planning to return to New Zealand?
Absolutely. We had a 2-week return ticket on that. We absolutely were planning to return. Although, okay, yes, there is going to be definitely a fallout between mine and David's relationship, but hopefully in that period there would have secured, the deal with my end customer for Retail Guru. Hopefully we'll get some sense. No, that did not happen.
Okay, so you're on the ground in Singapore, and when's your first indication that something's...
First indication was literally when we tried to get some money from a ATM at Changi Airport. Going, let's get out some Singapore dollars right here because, we come across, we've got very limited funds, what we got on us, and suddenly a personal card doesn't work. Well, this is odd. Maybe it's a card. I then start calling our banks back in New Zealand, personal bank back in New Zealand, say, hey, Westpac, what's happening, Westpac? Oh, there's a block in your account. Like, why is there a block on my account? There's something going on. We can't discuss that. You can talk to the police. What's going on? I thought, okay, I've got this message from David here. I thought, this is very odd. So I called through, spoke to Hamilton Police at the time. I said, what's happening? Please hold. Put me through to Daryl Guerra, who David had made a complaint to earlier that day.
And sorry, who's Daryl Guerra?
He's a detective, I believe, on the financial side of things for New Zealand Police based in Hamilton. He says there's been a claim here of fraud against you and against your company in New Zealand. I said, fraud by who? He goes, David Hillary has been here today from Worldclear. He's made a complaint here that you've stolen millions of dollars from him. So right now we put a block on your account while we investigate that so the funds can't dissipate. Like, get real, man. I said, I'm overseas. Why am I doing? Yes, we know you're overseas and we're concerned about that. I said, but yeah, he knew I was going overseas. Well, that's not what he told us. Bloody hell, what's going on? Like, this is totally blowing my mind.
Okay, so you're in Singapore. All your bank accounts are frozen. And you get detained? I mean, how does that all
That was walk into the OCBC bank there in Chulia Street, which I still vividly remember to this day. Go through the business desk. Okay, yep, show me your passport. Yeah, mate, here you go. Oh, yep, please take a seat. Please wait. Then I get called in by one of the banking representatives to go into a side room. Just as I walk through the door, straight away, there's 4 Singaporean police straight up behind me. Sit down. We have report. You've been stealing money. You come here to steal money. I'm like, what report? Oh, we have report. We've report. David Hillary at Worldclear has made report. You were stealing money from him. I said, okay. I said, there's a matter in New Zealand where he's made a complaint. Yes. I said, okay, right. I said, if you've got a problem, let's talk to David Hillary. Let's talk to New Zealand police. No. You talk to us now. You're here in Singapore. You talk to us. We go to a police station now. Handcuff me. Lead me out through the bank, through all the customer service area there. There's probably half a dozen customers all staring at me thinking, what's this guy done? He's murdered somebody. What's happening? Get him back to the police station, do all the photos as you do straight away. I'm like, well, what's going on here? Then sit down with the IO.
By the way, IO stands for Investigating Officer.
We have a complaint. We have a complaint here from David Hillary that you've been stealing money. I said, I've got a business funding agreement. The funds that were came into my company's account, I said, there are funds and transactions that may have also been done on behalf of Worldclear. No, you steal money. You must admit it now. I said, I admit nothing. Where's my lawyer? If you don't want to admit anything now, you go back. So I go back to the cell, which is a shared cell with around 5 other people there in a small room in the police station.
So this is in central Singapore?
This is central Singapore, central main police station. 5 or 6 hours later, taken back in again. Okay, you want to admit now? You steal money. I said, I admit nothing. I said, I want to speak to my lawyer. And I said, if possible, can I speak to my embassy, please? You're released while we investigate. I said, okay, well, what about passports, ID? No. So I go back to my hotel that I had in Singapore and wait. So I asked the IO, I said, how long is this going to take? Oh, maybe 2-3 weeks. We see what happened. Maybe 2-3 weeks. Well, 2-3 weeks became 3 months, became 6 months, became 9 months before they actually acted on something.
This 9-month period, where are you and what are you doing?
We're stuck there. At that stage, we were living through Airbnbs, we're living in cheap hostels, just trying to go, what can we do? This went on and on to the point where we got to near October in 2018, where I said, look, we're basically out of money. I said to my wife, I said, you're going to need to leave. I said, I don't want you to leave. I don't want the kids to leave. This is going to be terrible if you guys leave. I said, but this is just dragging out. So early October, my wife and children left Singapore.
Okay. So then eventually what happens?
Eventually then, March 2019, and I was charged by the police under CBT. They said, okay, we believe you performed CBT. We've got 7 counts. Criminal breach of trust, effectively a fraud. I turn up in court. The judge looks at the case and says, it's a matter apparently of $4.3 million. Do you wish to plead now? I said, no, Your Honour, I do not wish to plead. Okay, you cannot do this. Now you'll be on remand in prison.
Okay, so you're taken to Changi Prison.
Yep.
And you're on remand. So tell us about your time in Changi.
You get to Changi, you're there, you're unshackled, and you're told, strip. So you strip off all your clothes, bend over, do all that, check you out, go give you an X-ray. Next day, you're then transferred to what's going to be your permanent waiting home in a different section of the prison. And that's when you're given your little grass mat that is barely half a centimetre thick, which is supposed to be your bedding. That's it. And then you're stuck in the concrete prison cell with the open toilet.
How big is the cell?
The cell is about 8 foot by 12. That includes a toilet / showering area, and your own water source is the shower itself as well too. There is very little ventilation. There's a steel grill at the back of the cell. There's a smaller grill at the front of the cell alongside the door. That is your ventilation. There is no fans. There is no air conditioning.
This is Singapore.
This is Singapore.
Very hot.
In absolute high humidity, 30 plus degrees all the time. You shower 7, 8, 10 times a day to get cold. You're then in the prison cell there in that small area where you're supposed to live and sleep and eat, and poop and shower, all in that little area there confined together with 3, maybe 2 others if you're lucky. So there's at least 3 people in each cell, sometimes there's 4 if there's overcrowding, and often there's overcrowding. Mondays through to Saturdays, you get 1 hour out of your cell. That might be to go and do exercise in the concrete yard, or it might be to go and watch a little bit of heavily censored TV or read a newspaper.
Okay, so you're in Changi prison, 23 hours a day, 6 days a week in a cell. How often did you think about David Hillary and Worldclear?
Every single day. Every single day I was just going through my mind, going what had gone wrong with relationship, what had gone wrong in general, thinking about the case. I'd be getting updates as well too from my lawyer. This went on for months and months and months and months, just waiting, and you're just not sure at all what's happening.
Okay, so ostensibly you are accused of stealing money from Worldclear and transferring it off to these accounts. So did you steal money?
I didn't intend to steal the money, no.
You didn't intend to?
No. The money was there for business transactions. That's what was transferred for. That's what it was there for. There has been no dispute about the funding coming through, but now there is a dispute now from David Hillary, Worldclear. I didn't give approval for you to use that money. Hold on, I've got a business funding agreement here that says that I can use this money here for business funding. This should have always been a civil matter between us. That was the intent when I put the pause button back in May 2018, was to go, hey, there's a problem here with our relationship. I've got concerns around this.
Okay, so let's go back to 2021. So you've been in Changi close to 2.5 years by this
Close
point?
to 2.5 years, yeah.
Okay. And then so what happens then?
Literally the day before the trial was supposed to start on the Tuesday, Monday afternoon, lawyer rushes in. Prosecution's got a deal now. The deal is you come to court tomorrow, you plead guilty. We're going to give you a sentence. It means you're going to leave immediately. Okay, well, hold on. My wife has said, well, hey, there's a risk, obviously, if you take the deal, you've got to have a conviction, but then at least you get to come home. You've been there for so long now. We really miss you. You want you home. I'm going to have to go there tomorrow, and most likely I'm going to plead guilty because I'm worried that, hey, this could go longer. Go to court the next day. Stuff it. I'll plead guilty, but on the fact that I'm getting out, today. Yes, Mr. Whittam, we're going to change some of your charges here. The charges you've been charged with are not appropriate at this stage.
So that those 7 transactions you were initially charged over, they're gone now.
That charge of CBT, criminal breach of trust, now is gone. Okay, well, where's this going? We're now going to charge you with, I can't remember the exact charge, but effectively it was around a money laundering charge instead. It was a different charge. I'm going, this is not criminal breach of trust. It's not fraud. It was the transfer of electronic funds in breach of whatever agreement was. I'm like, okay, this is different. But it's going to be, your sentence is now going to be, 3 and a bit years. And that means, Mr. Whittam, that at the end of this day, you'll be released. I'm like, good. Okay, what I've said, okay, Your Honour, yes. Okay, do you plead guilty? I'm like, by the stage, frustrated. I've had enough. Yes, Your Honour, I'll plead guilty. Do you plead guilty to all charges? Yes, I do, Your Honour. I just want this matter over. And then finally, I could by that stage, actually leave Singapore.
So you got out and you were able to reunite with your wife and kids?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So just in terms of what you actually pleaded guilty to, so you were charged under the Corruption, Drug Trafficking and Other Serious Crimes Confiscation of Benefits Act. So, and this related to 3 transactions?
Yeah.
Okay. And so these all related to transactions from OCBC bank account, from the T1 Holdings OCBC bank account. One was to Poland, to a bank in Poland, $250,000. One UOB, another Singapore bank, $300,000, and then the third one to iCard AD in Bulgaria, €250,000. So did you make these transactions? And if so, what was going on? Whose money was this? What were you doing with it?
Yeah, so the transactions were made, so that they were funds that had come through from Worldclear to T1 Holdings.
So whose accounts did you transfer the money to?
T1 Holdings to T1 Holdings.
Yeah, and so what was going to happen to that money when it was moved there?
The intent was going to be used for business transactions.
But the accounts they were made to were in the name of T1 holders.
Correct.
So you had access to those accounts, so did Worldclear staff?
Depending on the account, yes, they would have had access to those accounts. The Paysera, they definitely had access to those accounts. The iCard was relatively new, so they may not have had individual access, but they would have had access codes to that.
So, I mean, you pleaded guilty. Do you believe, did you steal money? Did you have any plans for that money?
The plans I had for the money was to use for business transactions.
For whose business?
For my own business there, particularly as retail guru, via T1 Holdings to use those funds.
And you believe you had a right to that money?
I believe under the business funding agreement that I had signed with David Hillary of Worldclear that I had access to that fund to use.
So, looking back at all this now from a distance of a few years, do you have any regrets? Would you have done anything differently?
A lot of things differently. I would have shut down the accounts or put pause on the accounts in New Zealand, and I probably would have actually supplied New Zealand police then whilst in New Zealand with details that I've had around what Worldclear's transactions were doing. Would they have understood it at that point in time? I don't know. And that would have been probably a risk and exposure for me and my family as well too. But there was just too many flags. That's where it should have stopped.
Do you think you've been treated fairly in this?
No. No, the devil is in the detail, and the detail is in that data. The data will show a lot of detail that has been missing in this whole picture.
So you see yourself now as a whistleblower?
Whistleblower, yes.
So now, we're 4 years or so after you got out of Changi, you were able to reunite with your wife and your kids. How's your life now? How are things going for you?
As good as they can be. Mr. Google's not very supportive because as soon as someone Googles my name, it's a challenge. It's a challenge because they go, you are this great big defrauder. You've apparently stolen $4 million, which never occurred. I have done some contract work here and there, funnily enough, with retail companies, again, that are worried about loss prevention and otherwise, and I'm happy to keep doing that. I'd love to have a more permanent role. Life is just ticking along. We've been running some successful companies in the background as well too, particularly with online sales, and those are great. They're wonderful. So life is a lot more simple, a lot more appreciative of time with family and people that I trust.
So you have obviously provided me with some significant volume of Worldclear data. What's your motivation for doing that?
Look, I've done some things there that obviously are not right. I've been naive and stupid in the process, as I've already mentioned, around that going. But at the same point in time going, there's something here that's not right, and people need to be aware that what Worldclear has done for many years, as we can see from the transaction data there, is also not right as well too. Yes, people can label me as a bad guy. People can slander my name and go for it, whatever. Okay, I've pleaded guilty to something, and yep, David's going to hate me saying the fact that I don't agree with pleading guilty, but there was a need to do so in the end to get home. It's like you can't spend that long in that dump of a prison and not be desperate to get the heck out of there. I would love to be able to hear this heard in a court. I'm hoping that this can be heard in a New Zealand court at some point in time, preferably, to have this all out there.
So I guess from a New Zealand perspective, why should New Zealanders be concerned about what Worldclear did, what David Hillary did?
It's too easy, New Zealand. As I've seen now with going through some of the history and information here, people like Carl Michael Magnuson have literally written a book about how to run a bank in New Zealand, and David has obviously grabbed that, work with him to run effectively a bank in New Zealand that doesn't have enough checks and balances. What's stopping someone else doing this? What's stopping people putting through transactions for some people that are really not nice and finding potential terrorists or otherwise through an entity like this? There needs to be a reckoning in New Zealand to go, we need to have proper banking standards and we need to have proper checks and balances there as well too. And hopefully this can be an example of what actually needs to be done to future-proof it better for society in New Zealand and other countries as well too.
What would you say to people who might be listening and thinking, hey, this guy, he stole this money, he got caught, he pleaded guilty, now he's just trying to get revenge on this David Hillary guy who was just trying to run a business?
It's not about revenge, it's about awareness. These sort of things shouldn't occur in a financial institution. There should be very direct lines and very visible lines of who is controlling your money. Let's broaden the awareness of this. Worldclear is being run by a financial devil. This guy here is not a nice guy. He can preach and he can carry on that he is the best person in the world and the best guy in the world. He is not.
Well, certainly Whittam has some pretty strong opinions, eh?
Yeah, it's quite a story, isn't it? I think of it as the Richard Whittam story is the story within the Worldclear story. It's quite obviously very dramatic And obviously, Changi Prison is probably not somewhere any of us would want to spend any time.
Changi Prison is definitely not somewhere I'd like to go, that's for sure. So, Gareth, you have a bit more information about what Whittam was sentenced with. It gives a bit more detail, especially about what happened reportedly with the money.
So this is from the Singapore sentencing submissions from Singapore, the public prosecutor versus Richard James Whittam. And it says, on 17th of May 2018 in New Zealand, David Hillary instructed the accused, which is Richard Whittam, to transfer almost $1.2 million US from a T1 Holdings ASB bank account to a party in the United States. However, the accused, being Whittam, instead intentionally made the bank transfer to a T1 Holdings OCBC bank account in Singapore. It goes on to say that a day after that money was transferred to the OCBC account in Singapore, Whittam then made 3 transactions out of that account, sending large sums of money, totaling 1.1 million Singaporean dollars, to another bank in Singapore, a bank account in Poland, and a bank account in Bulgaria.
So quite a lot going on there. Gareth, you also have some more details from Whittam about allegations from David Hillary.
So this is from some written questions that we put to Richard Whittam. We asked him about how David Hillary says on the day that Whittam flew to Singapore, he had requested that Whittam approve the almost $1.2 million US payment. And this was, according to Hillary, from the T1 Holdings ASB US dollar account to Northern Trust International Banking Corporation in the US on behalf of Global Fidelity Bank, the Cayman Islands Bank. Hillary says he subsequently learned that Whittam sent this payment to a T1 Holdings Singapore account. And Richard Whittam's answer was, and I quote, "I never received any request to transfer funds to Northern Trust International Banking Corporation. I had the ultimate administration access to all of T1 Holdings accounts as the sole company director, so I could perform transactions through the accounts. I was not hands-on as David Hillary had his trusted minions, the bank transactions team, to process the transactions he approved."
Gosh, well, there we are. Anything else to add, Gareth?
So this is from T1 Holdings liquidators' reports. So the liquidators noted that T1 Holdings was placed into interim liquidation by the High Court at Hamilton on the application of Worldclear on the 29th of May 2018. In their final report, the liquidators said as funds were recovered, distributions were made to Worldclear. These consisted of payments in the New Zealand dollar, Canadian dollar, the euro, the British pound, and the US dollar, which was the biggest one. There was also 250,000 euros that the liquidators tried unsuccessfully to recover from Lithuania, where authorities ultimately recognised this money as assets with no owner and transferred to state ownership. In total, liquidators' fees came in at 162,083 New Zealand dollars, and the liquidation's legal costs came to more than 700,000 New Zealand dollars.
How did Hillary respond to all this, Gareth? You have some details of correspondence with him.
On May the 30th, 2018, after Whittam had left New Zealand and a warrant had been issued for his arrest, Hillary sent him an email. Hillary said that, due to Whittam's absence, he was deemed to have chosen to have ended their employment relationship. Hillary finished the email by writing, "Finally, for this letter, I request you to consider your current situation and circumstances and to consider the merits of contacting me to mitigate the trouble that you are facing in relation to your recent departure and actions in respect of the company's funds. I am informed that you may be able to escape prosecution and jail time if you come back and assist in recovering the recoverable funds, because if we aren't pushing, the New Zealand police reportedly, they might not bother. I'm not sure if you understand my feelings and position about putting people in cages. So let me tell you that I don't like it for myself or anyone else. However, the longer you remain away and out of contact with us, the less chance there is of being able to escape that fate or reduce your time behind bars."
Okay, so that's an interesting little tidbit. Sadly, David Hillary declined to do an interview with us. Gareth, where does this leave Richard Whittam now in the eyes of the New Zealand police?
In October 2025, Richard Whittam emailed the New Zealand Police. Whittam asked if there was still an outstanding arrest warrant or charge for him in New Zealand, or whether this had passed due to the statute of limitations, which sets a maximum time after an event within which legal proceedings must be initiated, and or the double jeopardy principle that prevents a person from being tried or punished more than once for the same alleged crime. Whittam also said he remained available should anyone from the New Zealand Police want to discuss the conduct of Worldclear and or David Hillary.
So Gareth, he did get a response from the New Zealand Police, I understand. What did they say?
The New Zealand Police responded saying, yes, there is still an active warrant for Whittam's arrest and the statute of limitations does not apply for two reasons. Firstly, because the offence is punishable by more than 3 years imprisonment, meaning there's no time limit on filing a charge. And secondly, because the charge was filed when the arrest warrant was issued in 2018. The police officer in charge wrote, I sought advice from the police legal section re the double jeopardy alleged element shortly after your case was resolved in Singapore. In short, because your convictions in Singapore were for different offending, you weren't convicted of theft, you would still need to face the theft charge here should you return to New Zealand. The officer went on to say, regarding Worldclear and David Hillary, I think the issue for you is that you were a party and co-offender to a lot of that conduct, so if there was sufficient evidence to lay charges, it would likely be you, Worldclear and David Hillary being jointly charged.
Whittam responded to the New Zealand Police's stance, and this is what he said.
I'm naturally disappointed that New Zealand Police seem to wish to hound me for something I've already been punished for. It just adds to the injustice. New Zealanders need financial protections, including proper checks and balances, so another Worldclear can't crop up in the future, because it's still a land without a banking law, as pointed out by Magnuson and exploited by Hillary.
So that basically concludes this episode on Richard Whittam, who, as noted, considers himself a whistleblower. As for episode 3 of Hamilton Confidential, Manny, what have we got in that?
Well, Gareth, it's some of the most interesting stuff that we scrutinised. We hear from 3 of Worldclear's more interesting customers or sub-clients, including a gentleman who was on the run from the FBI at the time.
That's the guy who chartered a plane and took his wife, mother and 3 dogs from Canada to Vietnam to try and outrun the FBI. So you'll be hearing all about that in episode 3 of Hamilton Confidential.
So the question is, why is a Brazilian company with a Bahamas company putting its transactions through a Cayman Islands bank that is then routing those transactions through an intermediary in New Zealand on its way to its ultimate destination?
I'm Gareth Vaughan from interest.co.nz.
And I'm Emmanuel Stokes from the Organised Crime and Corruption Reporting Project.
Interest.co.nz is grateful for funding support from the Brian Gaynor Business Journalism Initiative in bringing this project to fruition.